My name is Avery. I'm a 62-year-old housewife. My husband, who I was married to for many years, passed away 2 years ago due to a sudden illness. Now, I live modestly, managing the inheritance my husband left me. I have 2 sons. Both are already married. But when my eldest son Henry got married, he and his wife offered to live with me. I said, I appreciate your concern for me, but I'm still fit and fine on my own. I don't want to be a burden to you newlyweds. But Henry insisted.
I can't bear to leave you to die alone. I'm the eldest son. Let me take care of you. Don't worry about being a nuisance.
And so we ended up living together. Henry's wife, Rhea, is still young. She's 9 years younger than Henry, only 23. At first, I worried if such a young girl could handle being a wife, but she was the one Henry chose. I found no reason to object to their marriage, so I accepted it. When we decided to live together, I asked Henry, is Rhea okay with living with me? Won't a young girl like her dislike living with an old woman like me? Henry reassured me, saying,
It's fine. Rhea is kind. She'll get along with you. Besides, having you around will help us with the housework.
He was adamant about us living together. I couldn't find a reason to object after hearing that. Sure, I'm getting on in years, and it's too late to start worrying when something happens. Thinking that it'd be more reassuring than living alone, I gratefully accepted Henry's proposal. After we had been living together for a while, there was a time when I asked Rhea, Sorry to ask, but could you bring in the laundry? I'm going out to get groceries for dinner. Up until then, I hadn't often asked her for anything. But that day, I had unavoidable errands to run before shopping, so I decided to ask her. But then Rhea retorted,
Why do I have to do it? I'm busy right now. You should bring it in before you go, shouldn't you?
She seemed busy playing a game on her smartphone. Even before that, she hadn't helped with any household chores. But I chose not to say anything out of consideration. However, seeing her just lying there playing her game that day, I said a bit more firmly, If it's just a game, you can play it later, right? Could you please help out a bit? Rhea, looking annoyed, grumbled,
You're always nagging. Whoever's free should do the chores, right? You could bring it in before shopping. You're really annoying.
And with a glare at me, she went to the balcony to bring in the laundry. I was taken aback by her rudeness, but I thought it wouldn't do any good to say anything more and upset her further, so I left the house as it was. After that day, Rhea began to harass me. Ignoring me became a daily occurrence. When she didn't like the food I cooked, she would say to Henry,
I can't eat this. Hey, let's go out and eat. Just the 2 of us.
And they would go out to eat, leaving me behind. Henry did try to consider my feelings, saying,
Think about Mom, too. She went through all this trouble to cook.
But when Rhea was in a bad mood, all he could do was say,
Sorry, Mom. We're going to eat out today.
And follow Rhea's orders. Rhea never did any housework, no matter how much I asked. Instead, she said,
You're not working right. Aren't you ashamed to rely on Henry for everything at your age? It's normal for you to do the chores, isn't it?
She acted as if it was completely natural for me to do all the housework. Rhea accused me of not working, but she wasn't working either. But she felt superior because she was supporting Henry, who was working. I hadn't told Rhea, but I wasn't unemployed. I had a little income from managing the apartment left to me by my husband. I also gave Henry living expenses, so I wasn't completely dependent on him. But Rhea seemed to think that because I wasn't working outside the home, I didn't have any income. So Henry was footing all the bills. Once, when I was cleaning, Rhea shouted at me,
"Can't you clean a little quieter? It's noisy."
I was just vacuuming normally. But Rhea was on the phone call and was complaining about me to the person on the other end, saying,
"Hello, sorry about that. Yeah, it's Henry's mom. She's really noisy, isn't she? She should be able to do the housework quietly."
At this point, even I was annoyed. And I told Henry about what had happened that day when he came home from work. You know, I'm not saying you have to do everything. But Rhea, you've been absolutely no help with the housework. Not only that, but I got scolded just for vacuuming. It's normal to share chores, and of course I do my part. But I can't handle doing everything alone, especially when I get complaints, I told her. Henry replied,
"I'm sorry, I really am. I don't think Rhea means any harm. Maybe she was just in a bad mood today. I'll tell her to help out a bit more, so please, cut her some slack today."
But he didn't really take the matter seriously. Even so, I hoped that Henry would talk to Rhea, and I decided to watch how things unfolded without saying anything. Half a year passed. Rhea's attitude hadn't changed at all, and she didn't even pretend to do housework. I was completely exhausted from doing all the chores for 3 people and being considerate of Rhea. At that time, my second son Lucas happened to say,
"Mom, your birthday's coming up, right? Since your eldest son and his wife will probably celebrate it on the day, let us celebrate it for you today. Renly also has a present for you. So why don't we go out for dinner?"
I was invited. Lucas and his wife live in an apartment about 30 minutes away from our house. We didn't get to see each other often, but Renly, Lucas's wife, was kind and gentle, and she cared for me a lot. I gladly accepted Lucas's invitation, saying, "I'd love to. Of course I'll go." That night, after preparing dinner for Henry and Rhea, I went out to dinner with Lucas and his family. They had booked my favorite restaurant and gave me flowers in a bag as a birthday present. I hadn't had such a good time in a while, and I couldn't help but express my honest feelings, saying, "Ah, this is so healing. I haven't felt this happy in a long time." Hearing my words, Lucas asked,
"Did something happen with Henry? When you say it's been a while since you've been happy, I get worried. Have you been going through a hard time lately?"
I hadn't planned to complain, but I explained that I was doing all the housework because Rhea wouldn't do any, and that I had been yelled at for being noisy and had been spoken to harshly. Lucas, after exchanging glances with Renly, said,
"Mom, you don't have to live with them if it's tough. You can live on the income from the stocks and apartment rents that Dad left behind, right? You're only living with them because Henry wanted to, right? But if you're being treated so badly by Rhea, and Henry isn't helping you, you should just stop living with them. If it's hard for you to say it, I'll step in."
Renly also said, "If you're lonely living alone, we can live together. I love you very much. Please don't hesitate." I was so happy I could cry. I thanked them for their words and decided to keep trying a little longer, knowing that I had allies. "Thank you, but I'll try a little harder. They're my precious family after all. I really want to get along with Rhea, too," I said. When I came home that night, the dishes they had eaten from were still in the sink. With a sigh, I tried to clean up, but thought, it's only natural for me to do this because I always do it. Let's leave it as it is today, and let the 2 of them tidy up tomorrow morning. So I left the dishes as they were and went to bed. The next morning, as I was preparing breakfast, Rhea got up. I said to her while cooking, "Good morning, Rhea. I'll prepare breakfast. Could you wash the dishes you used yesterday?" However, Rhea ignored my words and started fiddling with her smartphone as she sat down on the couch. Even I couldn't hold back my irritation at Rhea's attitude, so I raised my voice. "It's common courtesy to wash your own dishes." Then Rhea replied in her usual manner, "I've said it 1,000,000 times. Isn't that your job, Mom-in-law? You know the saying, 'He who does not work
Neither shall he eat? You eat every day, so you have to do the housework."
Upon hearing our exchange, Henry hurriedly got up and asked,
"What's happening this early in the morning? Are you two arguing?"
He looked at me with a puzzled face. I told Henry with a sigh, "I only asked Rhea to wash the dishes you guys ate with yesterday. I just said what's obvious." Hearing my reply, Henry said,
"What the hell? This early in the morning?"
and tried to go wash his face, seemingly annoyed. But I couldn't contain myself and snapped,
"It's not about that. Every single day, I do all the housework, all of it, including yours. Do you understand how hard that is? At least you could wash your own dishes."
Hearing me, who rarely gets angry, shout like that, Henry hurriedly said,
"Sorry, I'll wash them,"
and tried to start doing the dishes. But Rhea said,
Why does Henry, who works outside, have to do that? You're relying on Henry, so it's your job, Mom-in-law."
She stopped Henry's hand, seemingly unsatisfied with him washing dishes. Then she said to me,
"You're a poor god of poverty living on a pension, really a nuisance. Get out of this apartment."
I had reached my breaking point.
"Why do I have to leave my own house? The name on this house is mine, isn't it?"
I told Rhea and to Henry. I confessed my true feelings.
"Rhea seems to be misunderstanding something."
"But you understand, don't you, Henry? The ones who need to leave are you two. I can't stand living together anymore. I've reached my limit." Rhea, unable to hide her surprise, asked,
"What do you mean? How can a jobless mother-in-law run a house? Aren't you relying on Henry?"
I explained to her, "I am the landlord of this apartment. I am not renting. This apartment itself is mine. Sure, I wasn't working outside, but Henry's father left me stocks, apartments, and land when he passed away. I manage those stocks, apartments, and land, and earn enough income to live on my own. I've never relied on Henry financially, even after we started living together. I pay for most of the utilities and food costs." Rhea was speechless, then turned to Henry and said,
"So we've been living without spending much money."
Henry just nodded silently in response to her words. I added,
"Henry might have wanted to show off to you, Rhea, but there's no way he could take care of all aspects of my life and take you out to eat, go shopping, and so on. Henry himself isn't earning that much yet."
At that point, Rhea seemed to realize the gravity of the situation. She changed her attitude, her face pale, and said,
"I'm sorry, mother-in-law. I didn't know anything, and I've been saying rude things. Please forgive me."
If our living together ends, Rhea won't be able to live the way she has been. She realized this and kept repeating,
"I'm sorry,"
in a flustered manner. Understanding the situation, they repeatedly apologized in a flustered manner. I told them, "I'm not saying I won't forgive you. We're family after all. But living together is out of the question. We need to resolve this. You two should rent a house and live there by yourselves." Henry reacted to my words with desperation.
"I'd worry if something happened to you, Mom. From now on, Rhea and I will help with housework. I just don't want to leave you alone."
However, I reassured him, "I'll be fine. If you're that worried, I'll live with Lucas and his family. They offered to live with me when we went out for dinner recently if I was anxious about living alone. I initially told them I'd try a little longer living with you two, but now I realize it's impossible. It may be a bother to Lucas, but I'm going to stay close to them." Henry seemed to understand my firm stance, responding with a mere,
"I understand,"
and said nothing more. Rhea, on the other hand, spat out,
"So you're abandoning us, despite the fact that we've been taking care of you."
Her tone suggested I was at fault. I realized there was no point in arguing with her and didn't say anything more. Within a month from that day, Henry and Rhea found a place and moved out. Due to the cost of rent, it seemed they could only afford a fairly old and small apartment. Rhea, who had never worked before, apparently started a part-time job to support their living. Henry informed me that Rhea was constantly complaining about juggling housework and her job. Their life seemed to be filled with nonstop arguments, and Henry seemed completely worn out. Henry kept contacting me saying,
"If only you'd forgive us. We'd like to live together again."
But I had no intention of going through that again. After Henry and the others left, I moved in with Lucas and his family after some time. Even though I told them there was no need to push themselves, Lucas said,
"It actually helps us a lot to live with you, Mom. Renly really wants to live with you, too. She wants to learn how to cook like you do."
And so we decided to live together. Since we started living together, they have told me, "It's okay to say if there's something you don't like, okay? We'll do what we can when it comes to housework, making sure we don't inconvenience each other." I spend my days cooking with Renly, enjoying my hobbies, and just having a fulfilling time. Right now I am very happy. From now on, I want to live in a way that doesn't destroy this happiness.